Hello, mate, it's Thrive Nation. I've got a super regenerative specialist. I've known him for 10 years. We met in 2012 in America when I was training with the American Association of Orthopedic Medicine. He's Dr. Tommy Bond. He's a legend, master's in science, medical doctor, chief medical sports director where he is. I mean, this man is a legend in the prolotherapy regenerative space. It's a privilege to know him. He's a huge just personality. I love the way he gyms. I love the way he does medicine. I just love the way he talks. And he's just a garrulous, robust man. And so welcome to the show, Dr. Tommy Bond.
Thank you, Steve. So happy to be here.
Brilliant. Now,
just for the
go for it.
Well, I was going to say for the audience, Steve and I met a decade ago and did medical missions together, and that's how I'm so happy that I was part of his beginning in Prolo. And it's a beautiful thing. So we'll talk about it here during the next half hour or so.
Yeah, brilliant. And, we've done work in Cancun on missions there. And 2010, I was at the Hackett and Hemel Foundation, where also I met a lot of the legends of prolotherapy and regenerative medicine. 13 years now, 28,000 sessions of prolotherapy in my practice. But I do want to get the word out. That's why we started Made to Thrive, the podcast and all the social media channels, to tell people, to educate people before they go down the wrong route or give them options. So I know, Dr. Tommy, you've been in this game for a long time. You've seen thousands and thousands of patients. What is the current status of chronic pain worldwide?
Well, as you know, Steve, most unfortunately, it's going up. We try to tell people about taking care of themselves and being part of their own healing and part of their own bodies. Unfortunately, that message doesn't seem to be getting out. It seems that people live this fatalistic lifestyle, like, well, my mother had diabetes, so I'll probably have diabetes. And, all of our people have arthritis in the neck. And so, there's nothing I can do about it. So part of it is an education to say, no, that's not quite true. There are things you can do to take care of yourself. And then once you get injured or you have an issue, it's not automatically, anti-inflammatory steroids and then surgery. What I tell patients is there's this strange, I don't know where this came from, but there's a strange kind of mentality. And it's not just in the States, I think it's around the world, that you have a medical problem. You're giving an opportunity to try to fix that problem. And then if the quote unquote conservative treatment doesn't work, well, then you just go to surgery. But here's the worst part. There's a belief system in the minds of patients around the world that if they get to the end of this line and then I'll just do surgery. Here's the worst part. The part is that they believe somehow that surgery is the definitive treatment, that surgery will lead to their cure. And that's where there's this massive disconnect, because imagine the emotional trauma, if you will, of a patient who goes through this stuff and says, well, okay, I'm really tired of not being me. I'm really tired of being dysfunctional and not being able to do the things for my family or for my job or for myself. So let me just get this fixed. So there's this belief that surgery equals fix. And then imagine what happens when the surgery makes them worse. Yeah. And they're not prepared for that. They're not mentally, emotionally, physically prepared for that hit. And so then you're taking a person and knocking them down a little, even that much further. And so I think a lot of what we see in chronic pain is this, acceptance of a belief that they're never going to be the same again. And that's why, for me, prolotherapy and regenerative medicine is just a miracle. It's beautiful. I mean, it's not a panacea for everyone, but as you know, you can take a person who's really broken and give them hope. That's half the battle right there. Yeah. Yes, we can heal the tissue, but if you don't heal the mind, I remember on one of my first trips down in Honduras, and I was working as a student. I was, of course, working under the greats Jeff Patterson and Carl Osborne, and we had some German students, And one of the German students, I won't say his name, but he was very funny. He at the end of the 2 weeks, I was brought up as a minor instructor, and so I was instructing him, and he said, "What?" I said, "Well, what would you like to do with this patient?" He said he had a big syringe, and he said, "We must inject the face." And I found that was so. I was like, "Whoa, what are we doing?" And he said, "Well, we're going to inject lidocaine to make her understand that we're going to help her and get rid of her pain immediately right now. Then we can come back with Prolo and fix the torn tendon or ligament in the temporalis." And so it was instructive to me, although he was the student, but it was very instructive to me that hey, he's on to something here.
Yeah.
That the patient needs to believe that, hey, it's not going to be yet another failure.
Yeah, no, it's true.
I've had all these things, and these doctors have promised me that they were going to help me, and I failed, and then had surgery and failed. So, that's my kind of overall shtick of how chronic pain is getting worse. We're not doing a good job with education. But a big part of that education is to make patients understand that all is not lost.
Yeah.
There's always hope. We can start chipping away at this thing, because pain, as you know, pain is a very dynamic beast. Okay. Pain, I know you've had this happen. You inject a person's low back and they start crying and they start having this massive emotional release. Well, it's not that we think that all emotions are in the heart or in the brain. No, we store negative energy in the form of pain in the musculoskeletal system, and what I would call the mesoderm, the mesenchyme, right? So we're all mesenchymal specialists, because you're treating fascia, you're treating mesodermal derivatives, right? So muscles and tendons and ligaments and fascia, that's all from one germ cell line, the mesoderm. So that's why we're doing stem cell work. We're working with mesenchymal or mesodermal stem cells. I know I'm getting too deep in the weeds, but you can release negative energy, and people just feel so much better.
Yeah,
just with that. That's just one piece of it. And Steve, me. We haven't talked in a long time, but I will talk for the rest of this day if you let me, because I love this stuff. So I'll back away and
no problem. It's good. I just want the audience to just latch onto some stories. I know you got thousands of stories, but your typical avatar of people that you really helped. I mean, Prolotherapy surprises me every single day. Had a full day already of patients that I've treated. But just tell the audience out there, maybe an incredible story, maybe a female, male story, or a sports person. People are listening now. They say they've got a chronic arthritic knee, or they've got facial pain or chronic neck pain, or they've even got vagal problems, vagal tone problems from the neck, which I'm seeing a lot of, with brain fog and having issues with gut issues because the vagus nerve is so pervasive. But give us 2 quick stories about some avatar that people can sort of latch onto.
Okay, let's do one. Would be the classic cervical pain, neck pain. One of the things that people need to hear out there is that you don't have to be paralyzed. It doesn't have to be some massive injury that you were in hospital for weeks or months. The classic thing, at least here in the States, is you'll see someone who has a fall, or who has a car wreck and has a classic whiplash injury from the back, or a rotational injury. Those are the worst, in my opinion. And what happens, especially mid-neck, C4 to C6, you have some issues there, and who lives right in front of that anteriorly. Right here is the stellate ganglion, or the middle cervical sympathetic ganglion. And when you start playing around with sympathetic and parasympathetic, you start getting imbalances. And again, what do doctors do? Oh, well, let's send you to PT. Doesn't work, or maybe not lasting. I don't want to cut on PTs. I love PTs. But, the PTs are going to help, but it's not going to last. Or they go to the chiros and it helps, but it doesn't last. It returns right back to that spasm and the emotional changes and headaches. And so, but, the women especially, they are trying to live quadruple lives, right? They're being the wonderful mother, the wonderful wife, and they're doing homework, and they're cooking, and they're cleaning, and they're working, they're living 8 lives, and you know they're honestly way tougher than we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we'll just moan and curse and carry on, but the women won't say a word, and they'll just keep pushing and keep pushing, and eventually they start getting some real kind of emotional traumatic stuff. And even if this is a small car incident, right? And then they'll go to their ortho and they'll do the MRI, and oh, nothing wrong, you're good. So now what? Now they're crazy, or they're just whining. So then they summon even more toughness and carry on. But eventually, after some time, they'll start getting real emotional problems, start getting, you know, what we call the sympathetic syndrome, or Barré-Louis syndrome, terrible headaches, all these things. And it's really because of an instability of the, you know, I tell the patients, the lug nuts got loose, you know, the wheel is wobbling. And so the tires will start to wear down very quickly. And in our bodies, you know, when the lug nuts are loose on a joint, the muscles will spasm. The muscles are the backup. So they're told, hey, we need some help, spasm. And so, you know, they get these very tight traps of neck and headaches and all these things. I just had one of these cases the other day. In fact, what's today? Well, yesterday, Tuesday, rather. And you know, she just bawled crying so I did just a simple diagnostic, superficial. This is not even Prolotherapy. Okay, this is just, hey, look, has anybody ever talked to you about instability? Deflection extension, she's got, you know, 3-level instability, a tiny little test injection at that superficial cervical ganglion. And she just starts bawling, crying. She says, I can breathe. Now imagine, that's not something that we're taught in school, right? So, but this would be considered a neuroprolo or a lift-off technique. What I call it is what it really is a hydrodissection of a scarred superficial ganglia, because it's sitting there and the muscles are constantly trying to, whoa, we're not supposed to move like that. So the muscles are constantly contracting. The fascial planes are now getting sick because they can't slide, right? So now you've got basically and I told her, she said, what did you do? I said, well, we just did some nerve fracking. You know, that's what I call it, nerve fracking or fascial fracking, and use that hydride, use the fluid to just peel open these layers so that they can now move. You know, tissue needs to move. We all need to move. God made us to move. And if you don't move, things get stuck. You know, it's not like rocket science, but for all your listeners out there, if you're thinking, man, if you're struggling and you're hurting, your back hurts, or you're something in your hip, or something in your thorax, it just doesn't, it hurts. Well, then call my friend Steve, and we can look with ultrasound, and you can see, what I do is I'll tell people, let's say, here's another patient. In fact, I had 2 doctors coming in after this, which is just funny to me because they don't want to talk to me in public. They just want to come see me on my day off. So they'll come in, and one of them says, I think something's wrong with my thoracic spine. I think maybe I tore something, but my MRI is normal.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll lay him prone, and I'm going to have him move his arms, and I'm going to have the ultrasound. And you absolutely, just like you can see these big holes, big, mixed tissue signals, right? Hypo and hyperechoic. Hyper means white, hypo means black. On echo texture, and you can see these things, and you say, well, look, there you go, right there. You've got a torn fascial plane. There's no way when we lose that biotensegrity. Right. So I talked about that for decades, right? So biotensegrity is really this concept of everything's connected, and not just physically, but physiologically and even emotionally, right? Neurochemically. So, again, I won't be surprised when, if I inject that area, that there's an emotional response, because that area has been sitting there holding this pain. It's been a source of negative energy. I know that you have Eastern philosophy training, which I wish you could teach me one day. because this concept of that we're just energetic beings, and energy flows through meridians and through these trains and fascial trains and planes. I think that's super cool because I see it, right? And I know you've experienced this, doing 20-something thousand patients. What's crazy is I had to, just a sidebar, I had to do something for the hospital for them to say how many injections I've done. Over 300,000.
Wow.
I think it was 80-something thousand patients, 300,000 injections. So, and that was about that was pre-COVID. So I don't know where I am now, but
brilliant.
So it's just just a beautiful thing, and I really hope that the folks that are listening and watching, just please know that if you hurt at rest, if you have muscle spasms, if you feel way too tight, and if you have difficulty moving, pain with movement, any one of those, there's a problem with your biotensegrity system. Now, what is that? What in the world is biotensegrity? It's an engineering term, but what it really means is that everything is held together, and you can't. Maybe some of you have heard of this. Like if you put a 5-pound weight on the tip of a pyramid, and you put little dynamometers all around the base, each one would have the exact number reading. So that what that means is that the force is dispersed evenly throughout the whole structure. And that's really what we have. And that's not something we were taught in med school. But from a physics perspective, in fact, I'll do that. This is fun. I do this with patients. Let's do a little something. Okay, everyone listening, I don't know how many folks you have out there. Maybe it's just me and you, but we'll have fun doing it. Okay, so let's do this. Sit up nice and tall. Take your right hand, make a thumb sign. Take this thumb and stick it in your side belly on the right, nice and deep. Then take your left hand and put it way out here above your head on the side and move it up and down, fast. What do you feel on your right thumb?
Movement.
Right? What are you feeling on your right thumb?
Yeah, movement.
Why is your right?
Yeah.
So, all of us, even the people that aren't in medicine, all your patients out there, all your listeners, you're all out there and you're saying, well, what the hell is this going? What's going on here? What you felt on your right thumb is tensegrity.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. What that means is that you are using your whole body to lift your arm. We were all taught in primary school, secondary school, high school. Hey, look, it's your shoulder that lifts your arm.
Yeah.
But no, it's not.
Yeah.
In fact, if you really want to have fun with this, you can take that thumb and stick it behind your right knee. And if you really pay attention, you'll feel it there too.
Yeah, exactly.
Your whole body is helps you move. So if you have, let's say, a shoulder issue, well, it's not your shoulder, it's your whole body that's injured. Think about it. So if it takes your whole body to move your arm, and you're saying, man, I have real big pain in my trap, my neck's hurt. Well, it's not just your neck that's injured, because it takes your whole body to move your neck. So, that issue that you're suffering with, but you're too busy. We're all too busy to deal with our own problems. We're too busy. Our lives are too important, and we're too busy. Well, what you're really doing is you're taking energy from your entire body to focus on that.
Yeah.
And now your whole body is going to have to change in some way to work around this problem.
Yeah.
And so, you might start having other problems.
Exactly. Right? The fascial planes are connected. I think we really got to realize it's all connected. All the planes are connected. All the fascial planes, all the nerves are connected. So that's the avatar. Chronic neck pain. Anyone who's got any chronic sort of pain, prolotherapy is just it blows me away every single day. But a question I often get, and maybe you can answer this, Dr. Tommy, it's important, is I've just seen it so effective over the last 13 years. We get about an 80 to 90% success rate across the board. That's with people that have had surgeries. That's with people that have had cortisone shots. So it's a high success rate, and people come in and say, well, I went to my MD and he says it's absolute rubbish, or it's not well known, or why have we heard about it? It's such a great technique. technique, you know, and then platelets have worked brilliantly on arthritic knees. And people listening out there, if you've got a chronic condition, there is a place for surgery, but it's not the first port of call. And I think this is what Dr. Tommy's saying. We need to use conservative, least risk orientated techniques to ensure that we don't compromise the tensegrity of the body, and surgery does that. So why is prolotherapy not more well known?
Well, because it's quite simple. It's not patentable. I hate to say it, and everything. It's like there you are in South Africa. Here I am in Louisiana. And it's we probably have the same weather, right? You're in summer and I'm in winter, but we probably have the same weather. It's just crazy. It's not even. It's a little chilly today, which is nice.
Yeah.
But the issue, it usually comes down to profit. And it usually comes down to money. And, dextrose is pretty cheap. So that's one of the issues. Now, the other piece that is interesting is the concept of surgery, right? Surgery is quite expensive. It's quite invasive. It has to take place in a hospital. And so when you start saying, hey, look, we don't really need to do that. We can do this much safer, much more elegant, simple technique that can help someone. Well, now you're really upsetting the apple cart here, Steve. What are you thinking? We're trying to run a hospital over here. Yeah. It's going to cost $1 billion to run this hospital. And now you're going to take away our revenue. You get a real target on your back. And so, I will tell you that you're a better friend to me than most doctors in my town, because they label me the voodoo doctor because he plays with blood and he does this crazy prolo stuff, and so what one of the big issues is this, and what I've been able to do is pretty powerful, and I really love you. I know that you're keeping all your cases, which is fantastic, and so the proof's in the pudding. Right. So what we've been able to do recently in the past couple of years is do private contracts with organizations that have large employee populations. Like, for example, our public school system here in my town has, a bunch of kids and a bunch of parents, a bunch of teachers and coaches and cafeteria workers. So it's about 5,000 people. And so their health insurance, they're self-insured. And what we've done with them is said, hey, look, let's do a pilot. And whenever your whenever your employees, let's say one of my patients, she's a cafeteria worker, she slipped and fell, hurt herself, hip issue. Well, I said, just do all the standard ortho stuff that you would do, anti-inflammatories, conservative care, physical therapy, dry needling, and then what? Then she goes to the ortho and he says, you need a steroid shot, gives her a steroid shot, goes back to physical therapy. She's still hurting. So now what? MRI. Oh, you got arthritis. You need a hip replacement. Time out. So now we're at the fork in the road. No one is saying that everything that she did was bad. Not at all. The opposite. But now you're at a fork in the road.
Yeah.
And you're going to go do this massive, invasive, ever-changing surgery that you cannot undo.
Yeah.
Or you want to try some prolo. Steve, we were able, just last year alone, just by doing this pilot program, I saved the school board over $1 million.
Wow. Well done. Well done, brother.
So we're just showing them like, hey, look, so let me do some prolo, and me, I'm a full, I do a full, if I'm going to do a joint, I don't just do a one step, I do the whole thing. I'm a biotensegrity freak and I believe in it. I'm passionate about it. So I'll do the whole joint with prolo and then go intra-artic and do PRP, maybe stem cell, usually PRP. And so what we've shown is you just took a patient who was about to have a replacement, right? And that was going to cost that company. First of all, it's going to be incredibly invasive for the patient. And again, life-changing, either good or bad. But you know, it's a big deal. It's very invasive. Okay, now we said, before you do that, let's try this. And if this doesn't work, fine, go to surgery. But just in 1 year, $1.3 million.
Wow, brilliant.
You know, so then we said, let's take it a little further. Let's look at this over time, and let's look at all the cases that we do. And it's funny we're having this, because I just got this information yesterday, the most updated information. So we've been tracking for 4 years with all of our corporate clients. What we found is, let's just go back to this neck patient, right? So we've done over 6,000 neck injury patients that were these were patients that were scheduled, that were going to fusion. So they did everything else. We didn't try to upset the normal standard of care. Go all the way up. Now it's time for surgery. Okay, hold on. Before you go to surgery, go see Bond. Okay, then I see him and say, okay, let me see what I got. Right? Okay. Instead of going to do a 3-level fusion, why don't we do some Prolo, restore the biotensegrity? And what we found, and this is not my opinion, I can show you the literature, I can show you the data. It's actually right out there on the nurse's station. I might go run and get it. But you know, at 4 years out, less than 1% of my patients go to surgery. At 4 years out.
That's incredible.
That's earth-shattering. That's mind-boggling, mind-blowing. You know, I mean, that should be yelled from the mountaintops. And that's what I'm doing here. Hopefully, you know, that people are listening, that, hey, this isn't some quackery, wackadoodle stuff. And some of your patients says, oh, you know, my regular doctor says that you guys are quacks and you're crazy. Well, I got 6,000 patients who avoided surgery.
Yeah. Just
in the neck. We have way more in the knee, way more in the low back. You know, so at what point? And here's the thing that, you know, that I've really been thinking about a lot the last few years, especially since COVID. Right? What is evidence? What do we? Oh, is it the just double-blinded RCTs? Could it be that, you know, there's all types of evidence, and some is better than others. You know, you want things to be reproducible. We all know what science is. We're all scientists. But at some point, anecdotal data really does matter. Like, you know, if you do 100,000 cases, and you can show in follow-up of those patients that they're still haven't had surgery and they're still getting along with their lives and playing golf or doing whatever it is that they like to do. I mean, what do you call that? You just call that placebo? Of course not. Come on.
Yeah. That's true.
That's not placebo.
That's empirical evidence. Empirical evidence is so valuable, and we want the science and we want the empirical evidence. But these are thousands of practitioners, especially in the US, that have got the evidence, that have shown it, that have documented it. And so I think that's what's really, really important for the people to hear, is that it is science-backed. Maybe give us a quick feedback on the science. You were the president of the American Association of Orthopedic Medicine. You're still involved. You know, what is the science saying? Because people ask me that, why aren't the universities doing the research papers? Why aren't they getting the grants? You know, and obviously we've answered that to a large degree because of the financial, you know, non-patentable, you know, prolotherapy is not patentable. But what is the research saying?
So the little research that's being done on pure prolotherapy is very good. It's just very difficult to do that research because it has to be self-funded. No one is going to fund that. Who's going to fund it? There is no mechanism for a prolotherapy procedure to somehow come back around and be able to pay for the funding, right? So the only funding we ever get is the funding that we all cut checks for ourselves, or we have a high net worth patient whose life is changed by it and says, hey, I want you guys to study this. Brilliant. Now, PRP and stem cell products, that's a little different, because eventually, if you, let's just say we had a PRP product that could be somehow patentable, right? From blood centers, right? If you took PRP from blood centers, in fact, that's being done. Been consulted on it from a company up in Pittsburgh that's doing it. Now, if you could do that, then you could somehow, if you did the right double-blinded studies, and then you show, we know it's going to look good, right? When it shows it, then you could take that product and say, this product is unique, and we're going to form a drug. This is going to be a drug, and we're going to call it, SteveStavs, right? And now SteveStavs is a drug, and now a drug company can say, hey, we'll pay you to license that, right? So it comes, the reason the universities are not studying this is because the question becomes, to what end? God forbid we want to help humanity, right? This is why you and I and Hackett Hemwall and the AAOM, we do medical missions to help people, right? So, and I feel like we kind of lost a chance. We've treated over 1 million patients in the third world, and we, of course, that's very difficult to capture that data. But universities aren't going to be incentivized to study this stuff unless they can be paid for it.
Yeah, it's true.
Right.
Yeah, but let's go through a little bit of someone's listening now. What's the difference between prolotherapy, PRP, platelet-rich plasma, stem cells when that applies? And then the latest is peptides, which I've started using as well here. But just sort of give a brief introduction and the person listening where they should start.
Yes. So prolos means to proliferate, right? And so prolotherapy is the overarching title, if you will. Traditionally, prolotherapy was used in Germany, started in Germany, was used there for many, many things, still is. And dextrose is the safest and, in my opinion, most effective. Those two have to be together. There are other things that may be much more proliferating. I do not use those because I don't like the safety data. Okay. So the dextrose solutions that we typically use and typically teach are very effective. And prolos, it just means to stimulate the immune system. Okay. To stimulate the proliferation of new tissue, new and functional tissue. There's a big difference between proliferation and scarring, right? So there's something called sclerotherapy. Scleros means to scar. So sometimes you want to scar something, right? So, which that sounds kind of nutty, but let's say you have a big incompetent vein, a very, as some of my patients will say, a very close vein. It's not very close, it's varicose, but if you have a varicose vein, very close to the skin vein, sometimes it's dysfunctional, it's not working, it's painful, and you really just want to close it down. You want to scar it down. And so for that, there are scarring agents. Those are called sclerosants, as opposed to proliferants. And a sclerosant will cause that to shrink up. It's a high osmotic gradient. It'll suck all the water out of it, and it closes it down. That can lead to a more functional system there. So that's can sometimes be helpful. Prolotherapy, on the other hand, is to stimulate new tissue. Okay. And this is why when, now we have doctors here who say, oh yeah, we do that stuff, Bond. Oh yeah, we can do that stuff. No, you can't. Sorry, I'm not trying to be rude, but you don't know precisely how it works. And this is why prolotherapy is very elegant, but very precise. And, when you and I were together, I was very hard on everyone. You have to, this is not 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees. This is 28. You have to be precise.
Yeah.
Because it's at that enthesis site, at that fibroosseous junction between the bone and the tissue. That's where the stem cells are. So that's where that needle needs to go to really say, hey, you, wake up. Stem cells, let's go. Wake up. Give us some new tissue here. We need new tissue, functional tissue, and then they're nice and strong wells, right? So that prolotherapy was the original use of regenerative medicine. Okay. All right, as I say, it's the original stem cell procedure. Now we've advanced some, because when you look at this, you say, hey, okay, prolotherapy starts at the beginning. That's what I say. So when you have 3 phases of healing tissue in the body, you have an inflammatory phase, you have a growth factor and stem cell recruitment phase. Then you have all of this stuff coming to the site, which is inflammation. That's what inflammation is. God made inflammation. Inflammation is good. Don't listen to the rest of the world. Oh, inflammation is so bad. No. God made inflammation. Yeah. Man made anti-inflammatories. Right?
True.
So we want inflammation. We just don't want it so high that it hurts so bad.
Yeah.
Because when I show people the healing curve, I say, pain, this is called pain mountain. Pain lives up here. So we don't want it. Let me hold that thought. I should have it. So, oh shucks, I don't have it. Okay. Well, I thought I had the picture I could show your patients, and it would be really nice to show them that healing curve, to where you see that, you've got to go through inflammation to get to the next part of the healing phase. And the reason I say this, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, is because it's important to understand that all we're doing in regenerative medicine, regardless of if you're using peptides or stem cells or fat grafts or amniotic fluid or umbilical cell tissue lining or umbilical cord fluid, all of it is just doing this one thing, augmenting your body's healing. So it's just at what phase of the game are we augmenting? Are we augmenting phase 1, i.e. prolotherapy, phase 2, which is growth factors and stem cell recruitment, or phase 3, which is new tissue development, which is really dropping in, really phase 2 and 3 is where PRP, peptides, growth factors. And let's go back to PRP. PRP, platelet-rich plasma. I hate it. Terrible. What a terrible acronym. Who knows what that means? You probably have 1 million people listening right now, and half of them don't even know what a platelet is.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, our children probably don't know what platelets are, right? And if you do know what a platelet is, then you just think of it as clotting, right? So I don't like the acronym. What I like to call it is what it is, a growth factor concentrate. So a GFC, it's a growth factor concentrate. Growth factors, that sounds good, right? Growth factors, that sounds good. And I tell patients, well, we want to grow new tissue. So we like growth factors. Well, what about peptides? Well, peptides are growth factors too.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're all talking, well, what about amniotic fluid? What about amniotic tissue? Well, there's no cells there, right? Because that's all dead, because you have to sterilize it to put it into another human being. We hope, right? But what is it? What is it? It's growth factors. So now we're all talking the same language. So Dr. Steve, man, my shoulder, you think you can help me out? Oh yeah, I don't want to do I want some of that good stuff. I want to go to the next level. Okay, you mean growth factors? Yes. So now we're kind of talking on the same page. And so what I say is, okay, Prolo is phase 1. Prolo is pick up the phone, 911. Well, I don't know what it is in South Africa, but it's 911 in America. It's the emergency services, and they say, "Hello, what's your emergency?" You say, "I'm in Dr. Steve's office. Help!" And then you hang up. Now tell me what's going to happen in Dr. Steve's parking lot.
Yeah. Chaos.
It's going to get inflamed. It's going to get congested, and you're going to have a lot of inflammation. You're going to have different cars. You might have the police, the fire department, and who knows. So that's a non-specific inflammatory response. So when you turn your ankle, what happens? Yeah. Everybody out there listening knows, you turn your ankle, it swells up.
Yeah.
Well, what that is you just called 911. So it's not a very specific response, but your immune system says, hey, look, we're sending everybody in. We don't know what's going on down in the ankle. So we're sending everybody in. We're sending every type of white blood cell. We're sending, you get the fluid comes from opening the doors, because those cells have to get into the tissue that was damaged. Your immune system doesn't know if you have an infection, if you have cancer, or if it's trauma, we don't know. We just know that there's torn tissue, and we're sending the troops in. Now, with PRP or any growth factor, you're going to avoid some of that because it's a much more specific response, right? We pick up the phone, we call the emergency people and say, hey, look, I'm in Dr. Steve's office, and we kind of smell some gas. Smelling some gas going on here. Okay, we'll send. So now you have a more specific response, right? You're not having every emergency service come in. You might just have some fire people and maybe a plumber or two or something, right? And then if with stem cells, when you look at fat grafts or adipose tissue cells or bone marrow cells, right? Then you're really specific. Hello, I'm in Dr. Bond's office. There's a guy with a gun. He's not really waving it, but he's threatening people because, whatever. He didn't get his Christmas prescription. So can we get some help over here? Well, that's going to be they ain't going to have any fire department coming for that, right? You're going to have the SWAT team come. So it'll be a much more specific response. And so that's the way that I talk to patients about it. I feel that stem cells are typically, I'm going to get shot for saying this, I'm sure, they're typically overkill for a lot of things. Okay, so I had a patient yesterday, drove in from Florida, and young guy, 20 years old, college athlete, soccer player, or football player, as you guys would say, right? And the guy's got a chance to go to the next level. Very good athlete, wants stem cells. I said, son, you're a walking stem cell. You're 20 years old, for God's sake. I mean, you're full of stem cells. Your whole body's full of stem cells. All we need to do is tell them, hey, guys, come over here. Come over here and look at this disc. And so we'll do an intradiscal platelet-lysate. And of course, with Prolo, he's got a listhesis at L5 as well. So we'll do that for him in a couple of weeks. But that's the example of kind of how I present those different modalities or techniques, to patients. Almost always. In fact, I can't really fit. It's on one hand, I can think of the numbers of patients that I've done, a regenerative technique without employing Prolo, because you must have the tensegrity network reestablished, or you're kind of
you're going to re-injure. Because the joint's going to still be moving, so you might have it,
all over the place.
And then 6 months later, you're going to re-injure the joint because the joint needs stability. In fact, the stability is more important than the actual inside of the joint. So that's incredible. That's right. And I think that's a great analogy. And, 41% of our listeners are in the US. So before you end up, and I want to just respect your time, and I know how important that is. Just tell us about the future of prolotherapy, where you see it in 10 years' time, because I think I'm excited about what's happening with regards to prolotherapy, PRP, the stem cells, the ozone, the peptides. Where do you see it going?
Well, I'm the eternal optimist, right? So I believe that what we'll see is guys like you and I and HHF and AOM are going to really be the grassroots efforts to continue to stoke this fire. And, it's God bless you for the podcast. The technology is way above my head, but, we need people to spread the word.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, I think that's the positive, Tommy, right? I hope I'm wrong with this next statement, but I think the powers that be will continue to attempt to squash PRP and stem cells because the money is too big in the surgical realm. Here in the United States, every hospital in this country would completely go bankrupt if we actually did a study in the state of Arkansas with David Harshfield. I don't know if you've ever met David. David treated, it's a quick story, but David treated the wife, tennis player of a senator, and got her better. She was supposed to go to surgery. Well, they were at a party, and the governor there said, well, wait, how is she back on the tennis court like she was having surgery.
Mm.
Oh, well, you know, this guy, David, did some kind of blood stuff to it with Prolo or something. So he did Prolo, a Prolo SCP or a Prolo PRP, Prolo with growth factors, right? And so all of a sudden he perks up and says, we should just do this for the state employees.
Wow.
Well, there's 70,000 state employees. All of a sudden, this is a big deal. Blue Cross Blue Shield, the insurance company, lost their shirts, all went crazy. They said, no, we got to stop this. Well, what was quite interesting is in those discussions, he pulled me into the discussions because I trained him. And so he said, Tommy, I need you to come talk about all this. Well, what was really interesting is that when we looked and said, well, what if we could just save 10%? You know, what if it just works 10% of the time, which we know it works 99% of the time.
Yeah.
But if it just worked 10% of the time, it would bankrupt all the hospitals.
Sure. Wow.
So all of a sudden now you're dealing, imagine all the hospitals in South Africa and how much money they produce. So you're up against a massive force. And so I think that prolotherapy will continue, and we will continue to help people, especially in the third world or in countries that have socialized medicine. I think prolotherapy is an absolute miracle. I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong, that we will not see the higher level techniques crushed. But that is a fear. It is a fear, you know. But Prolo, I think, will continue, and who knows? Maybe if there can be a way to take these higher level growth factors and stem cells and turn them into drugs. Well, then hell, you're going to see them. Oh, they're going to go all over the world then.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden because really, let's think about it. If a knee replacement makes $100,000 for a hospital, they don't want to lose that money.
Yeah.
So if you have a stem cell technique like I do, that, and you do too, probably, you know, EMC with fat graft, and that, you know, our patients don't have they don't have knee surgery. I mean, they don't have a knee replacement for at least 4 years. So all of a sudden, what happens then? Well, then the hospital is going to say, no, we can't have this. We'll fight you on it. So my joke is that, you know, if I should just charge $100,000, then all of a sudden they'd be like, oh yeah, we want bond, we want that thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know where it goes.
Okay.
I am hopeful that, you know, just calmer heads and more common sense comes to the forefront. I think with the data that we're doing on the corporate program and showing, I mean, it's just, you can't, at some point they're going to have to listen. They can't say that, well, look, he's done, you know, we've done 1 billion procedures and saved $1 billion for these companies, but it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, I got you.
you know, at some point, you common sense has to prevail, right? But I do think that people who will make the change won't be you and I.
Yeah.
Right? It will be the people.
Yeah.
The people will demand. And that's why I just say we keep hitting singles. You know, my dad, when he was alive, he used to tell me, Tommy, just hit singles. Don't swing for the fence. This is a baseball analogy.
Yeah.
You know, don't try to hit home runs. Just take care of one patient at a time.
Yeah, it's true.
Just I like yoga and I like martial arts. And so the idea of being present, the idea of just what you put your attention on, you put your energy on, right? So if you're my patient, then that's what I'm attending to.
Yeah.
And then that patient gets better, then they will go and hopefully say, you know, when they're at that party or that whatever, and someone says, oh yeah, you know, I got to have my shoulder operated on. No, you don't. Oh, that's hogwash, rubbish. And then she said, no, I had it done. I shot. So you can't tell me that it didn't work. What are you going to tell me? It was placebo. I had a tear. Now I don't ever tear.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, you know. It doesn't really work.
Yeah.
So if you have enough people that have had the service, right? It's like you say, hey, you know, man, I hate Thai food. It's terrible. You know, it causes you know,
Yes.
I don't know. It causes, yeah. So then you say, well really, 80 million people would disagree with you, or, you know, a billion people. Like, I love Thai food, it's my favorite.
Yeah.
But you know, so at some point, they just practical knowledge will shine through, right? And we can only be in the darkness for so long.
Yeah, it's true. Well,
you know,
I want to declare
you are a light.
Yeah,
you are
you
a light.
too.
Keep it up.
Yeah, Dr. Tommy Bond, just tell people where they can find you. We've got a big network in the US, and where they can book appointments and connect. I know you've lectured thousands, you've taught thousands, you've got a calling and a vocation to empower people, you know, physicians, doctors from all walks of life. So I really want to declare favor and blessing over you. I just salute you. I honor you. You, as someone that I trained with a long time ago, you know, I've been doing this since 2010, trained with Jeff Patterson, was my first Hackett and Hemwell course, you know, these guys. But tell people where they can find you and how they can book a session with you.
Yeah. And I have, just to let people know, I have patients from all over the world. I've had patients come from China, from Australia, New Zealand, which I'm just, you know, so blessed to have people to think that much of me, I guess. But you know, I'm in Louisiana in the States. My website is bondmedicalcenter.com. Or they can just Google Dr. Tommy Bond. It's going to be me, I'm sure. But, you know, I'm, again, happy to see anybody and try to help. I just like you, you know, I saw a patient yesterday that had a neck fusion with loose hardware. And I said, man, my friend, I'm so sorry. We got to get this thing stable. I can't do anything. He said, but I've heard about you. My friend said, I need to come see this. Well, yeah, come see me after you get that screw that's flopping around in there, you know, better. So I help anybody for any reason. And again, you can find me there. I will say that if there are any billionaires listening or high net worth individuals, call Dr. Steve. And what we would love to do is do mission work, right? And help the people who are less fortunate. You know, Steve, I wanted to share a story that when I first met you. So I looked at this email string that you and I had here, and it went all the way back to 2014. Yeah. And when I had, as the instructor, I always sent out an email afterwards saying, hey guys, thank you for coming and really helping these people. And, you know, you replied to me. And so just for the audience, so, you know, we do these training sessions, and some people think of them as training sessions, but I always think of it as a medical mission, because we're helping people that have no money, that they have no resources, right? And so you literally are changing lives, and it's the most beautiful thing for these people. And so, you know, as doctors, we all, oh God, we got to study. We have to look at the book, and what is this biotensegrity, and how do I do this, and how? But Steve was a person who got it from the start, that we were there not just as orthopedists or these mechanistic doctors that are trying to learn a technique, but we were there to change lives, and we were there to help these poor people that had real injuries. And you immediately got it, and immediately understood that some patients needed prayer, and some patients needed hugging, some patients needed just to let you cry, or let them cry, rather. Hopefully we weren't crying, maybe crying, laughing at each other. But, you know, and so when I sent out this blanket email saying, thank you for coming, and please realize that this is much more than just technique learning, it's changing lives. And he responded, you know, and with a message saying that it really was something special, and that he had good recognition of that. So I just want to thank you. This is the kind of guy this kind of doctor that you are, and you should be commended for it. And, you I don't know how many people are listening or watching, but if you're anywhere near this guy, you need to go see him.
Yeah.
But yeah, the billionaire thing was somewhat in jest, but really, if people want to see what real beauty looks like, is the face of someone who's dirt poor, who can't afford anything, and who's in pain. So all of you out there that's in pain, imagine if you had zero resources, none, and all you knew is pain. So imagine someone helping. What a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah.
And that's how we make our world better. We're not going to worry about all the negativity, what Putin's doing and what Ukraine's doing, and all this other stuff. There's a lot of negativity out there, and we pray for those folks that they have a change of heart. But what we can do is help the people who can't help themselves. That's my calling. That's what I do. Whether you're, a patient of no means, or a patient with your own jet, right? I have them come from all over on their jets and all this. But the truth is that we do this one person at a time.
Yeah.
And thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This has been fun.
Yeah.
So
and we'll
put,
so good to see you. So good talking to you, Dr. Tommy. It's been a privilege to just walk the journey with you. We'll put all the links in the show notes. And I just trust that the right people end up at your door, in terms of you just being so present and mindful with them and helping them along their healing journey, and helping people live out the calling and purpose that they were created to do. And that's what we do when we take pain away. So I just once again declare favor and blessing. We will connect again. I'll be back in the States to see people like yourself, because I just want to really honor and just thank you for your part along my journey. So thank you so much. Have a brilliant day. Thank you for being this pioneer.
Brother.
Thank you for laying your life down. I know there's a lot of things you've done that have not been paid for, but you've done them because you want to see regenerative medicine grow and just see people's lives change and physicians' lives change. My practice has changed dramatically. But thank you. And we'll chat again.